Opposition to BCE's bid for Astral Media continues to grow. A new study suggests the deal would negatively impact Canada's media landscape. The report was commissioned by the Public Interest Advocacy Centre and written by Dwayne Winseck. He's a professor of communication studies at Carleton University. Great to have you with us.
Nice to be with you.
Now, let's just discuss what is wrong with this transaction. Quite specifically, we'll move on to kind of media concentration in general, but this one in particular, BCE, already a bit of a behemoth, wants to buy Astral Media. Why shouldn't they buy it?
Well, I think you've just nailed the key point right on the head. It's BCE already is a behemoth. It's moved back into the broadcasting field just last year, we have to remember, with its reacquisition of CTV. And as I like to point out, Bell has failed at this mission once before, and I think once, it's only had CTV under its umbrella for the last year. I think at the very least we need to see how this pans out.
How does the media industry differ from industries like mining, auto manufacturing, other industries that have seen great consolidation over the years and have seen lower costs, higher innovation because of scale? How's this one different?
Well, I think media industries are, in some ways they are similar in a sense of scale. Their products are easy to reproduce, and it's very easy for them to scale. But as a society, I think we've said that there's something about the media that we want to ensure that there's a maximum range of voices and maximum access to different points of view, different media distribution technologies and so forth as possible, not a limited range.
So just staying with Bell Astral here, this is where I get confused. Even in the press release, the day that BCE announced this, it said that it's buying one of the biggest source of its content. So it's a vertical play. It'll probably reduce its costs because it'll get the stuff, no doubt, at a better negotiated rate. Why isn't that good for consumers? To Bruce's point, if you lower your operating costs, your inputs, then surely you pass some of that on to consumers, either in the form of innovation or in prices.
Well, I think we have to look at this from the point of view of consumers, and we have to look at it from the point of view of people who are producing the content. And, Bell can either go to the market, as it does now when it acquires content from Astral, or it can internalize this into this giant vertically integrated company. The idea that just bringing content inside the company is going to realize all sorts of efficiencies, and that these efficiencies are then going to be turned over in the form of benefits to consumers is deeply problematic for at least two reasons. One, these efficiencies often don't come to pass, and then second, the benefits are more often than not translated into dividends to shareholders rather than benefits to consumers.
How does this conversation differ today versus if we've been having it 5 or 10 years ago, before the advent of a consumer choice between surfing on your computer and watching TV, or watching a program live and recording it on your digital video recorder? I mean, there's all sorts of different ways to consume media that surely have altered the discussion about consolidation.
Absolutely. We're living in a media environment characterized by abundance versus an old media environment characterized by scarcity. And I think the promise all along has been that we would see this massive proliferation of different sources. And for a while we did see that. When you look historically, what you see is that there was a decrease in levels of concentration, there was increased competition and diversity, but really around 2000, things turned around. Actually, a little earlier than that, concentration went up. They plateaued at very high levels in 2000, stayed there for much of the decade, and now in the last 2 years have really shot upwards.
Is there some kind of magic level that we can see in other markets of media concentration that's better for consumers, or it works better for the producers of the content?
Yeah, I think you can look around the world and you can find many different kind of bits and pieces that you'd want to emulate. So, for example, if you look in Britain, you see very low levels of vertical integration in Britain. In some of the Scandinavian countries, you may have concentration in some markets, say in broadcasting markets, but then you have an open network regime, kind of the network neutrality that's meant to kind of counteract the idea of concentration in certain segments.
How would you characterize the CRTC's involvement in this, and what is your rally cry to them when it comes to media consolidation?
Yeah. Well, the CRTC so far is really kind of, it hasn't seen a merger and acquisition that it can't approve. I think it has some relatively new tools on the books. I'm not a great fan of these tools. I think they're rather weak. But at the same time, this deal now puts the CRTC's new thresholds and tools to the test. The CRTC has set out a number of kind of magic numbers, and this deal basically triggers several of those numbers. And I think the CRTC here has really sturdy ground to look at, in particular in the pay television market. And I would also say they should assess the vertical integration impact. On both of these measures, we're really up at the higher end of the scale by both the CRTC's own measures and by global standards and any other rational measure of concentration.
Would you take the view that content producers should never be owned by distributors?
I'm not sure if you can say that all the time. I think as a general rule, it's a really good rule. Those who own the medium shouldn't also own the message, because those who own the medium are typically 4 to 10 times the size as the people who produce messages, and they basically use message producers to drive their transmission businesses. They're kind of their wireline, telecom, internet, wireless businesses.
But is there any evidence to suggest that the producers of the content, which I guess we can all agree we care about, we'd like there to be a robust community of producers in the country, would have a worse existence if they didn't have deep-pocketed owners? It seems to me that might actually be a pretty nice way to go.
Yeah, I think the evidence is pretty clear. The evidence is clear, both kind of rigorous academic evidence as well as anecdotal evidence. You talk to small media producers now, and they are very clear that they're having a hard time getting access to these large vertically integrated companies. The CRTC is handling these problems all the time. The Independent Broadcast Group has come out in its submission and also said it's quite concerned about this deal. So is the Canadian Media Producers Association. These deals have not treated media producers very well in the past.
All right. Appreciate your time today, Professor.
Well, thank you very much.
Dwayne Winseck, Professor of Communication Studies at Carleton University. And it's time now to zip around the globe for our World Wrap.